Ready to Grow St. Joe's Health, Nutrition, and Movement Initiative with our first gardening professional development series focused on starting or revitalizing a garden or adding container gardening to your early childhood programs. My name, for those I haven't met, is Terry Kosick. I'm the director of the Ready to Grow St. Joe Early Childhood Coalition for St. Joe County. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all, and I'll do some introductions in a moment. But if you would take time to introduce yourself in the chat box, that would be very helpful to us, as well as we'll use the chat box for questions after each presentation because we have so many participants today engaged in this presentation. And lastly, or two more things, please mute your mics as that will be helpful to all. And if you notice that the name associated with your picture is Becky Lees, please go ahead and hover on the three dots and change that. We'll figure that out for the next time. So this event is an exciting event for several reasons. We'll hear from experts today with valuable tips and guidance about gardening with children ages 2 to 5. It's also the first of a 4-part series designed to provide information, support, and technical assistance to those who want to begin or enhance their gardening with young children. Towards the end of today's session, we will share information about resources, including free curricular guides, free resources, and a Ready to Grow mini grant opportunity for early care and learning programs in St. Joseph County. Ready to Grow is incredibly grateful for all of its partnerships in our local community and throughout the state. And we are truly grateful for our partnerships with Purdue Extension and Unity Gardens as we begin this health, nutrition, and movement initiative. It's my great pleasure to introduce our 3 expert presenters for today. Becky Lees with Purdue Extension Nutrition Education Program. She is the Community Wellness Coordinator serving Marshall and St. Joe counties and local foods and community garden specialist. Becky has been an active member with Ready to Grow since its inception in 2014, and we just are so thrilled to be working alongside her and the Purdue Extension. Emily Evers with Purdue Extension St. Joseph County as well is here with us and presenting. Emily is the County Extension Director and Extension Educator in the area of agriculture and natural resources. If you know about and appreciate the fabulous Ag Day that happens in the spring every year in our county, it's a fabulous weekend for families. It's coming up in I think the weekend after next, April 4th, 5th, and 6th. Emily is the facilitator of Ag Day. And so a huge shout out and thank you to Emily for her Ag Day offerings. It's a free event, and I will send the poster for Ag Day in both English and Spanish in a follow-up email. Our third expert today is Katie Lane. She is with Unity Gardens. Katie is Director of Operations at Unity Gardens and will share valuable insights on what Unity Gardens offers and their work. And she will also help us with valuable insights on how to implement gardening in early care and education spaces. Katie is our first speaker today. Thank you all again for being here. And let's get started, Katie.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We're going to talk about gardening, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. So first of all, I want to introduce you all to Unity Gardens. If you have not heard of us before, we are a local nonprofit operating in South Bend, Indiana. And our main goal is to connect our community to fresh food, nature, and each other. And this is an overview of our main site out on the west side of South Bend. And we do this through a number of ways. The first is these free pick gardens. So any of our Unity gardens you can go to, use as an edible park. You can exist in it, you can hang out in it, have a picnic, explore the space. You can harvest whatever is growing. That is true for all of the Unity gardens. But we also do a number of free classes. So upcoming in spring, we're doing an after-school garden club for kids every Thursday in April from 4 to 5 p.m. You can register for it on our website, but you can also just show up. We're doing a Wild Ones conservation series right now. So if you're interested in learning about natives and growing those, that's on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. until the middle of April. And then we're doing a spring foraging class in the middle of April, April 14th. And we have an Earth Day event, April 26th. So these are some of the upcoming free programs. You're welcome to come to any of those. And if you'd like to register beforehand, that lets us know how many people to expect, but it's not required. So come to any of those, come to any of the gardens. We also use a number of volunteers to keep everything running. So if you'd like to volunteer, please just reach out and just stay in touch with us to see what we've got going on. And then one of the other programs I wanted to highlight are those satellite gardens. So our main garden is staffed by the Unity Gardens team, and that's 7 acres entirely free pick. But then we have about 40 to 50 satellite gardens every year that are entirely free to pick from and are volunteer run. So if you are interested in hosting a satellite garden, as long as it can be an open public space and anyone can pick, we can support you and add you to our satellite garden network. So if this is of interest to you, please email me and I will get you up to date on this program. It's super exciting building this network of edible gardens across South Bend and Northern Indiana. But that's Unity Gardens. If you have any questions about us, please put it in the chat. But now we're going to talk about gardening. So there are 2 main ways that you can really get your garden started. The first, and the one that a lot of people go towards, especially if they're beginner gardeners, are container planting. And you can use basically whatever you want. If you have old Rubbermaids, if you have old 5-gallon buckets, if you have an old rusted out wheelbarrow, if you have a watering trough for a horse, if you have any bucket whatsoever, you can put dirt in it and you can make it a garden. The things you want to make sure is that there is drainage. If you don't allow the water to drain through, it's going to sit where the roots are growing and rot those roots. So you really want to make sure that there's drainage in the bottom of your pots. And if that means you're using a Rubbermaid, you can just get a drill and drill some holes in it. And that's the same with any container you use, but you need to make sure that the water has somewhere to go. You want to leave at least 6 inches to a foot for root space. So you don't want to use too shallow of a container so that your roots don't have anywhere to go. And that's especially true for some of those bigger plants. So if you're doing tomatoes or peppers or eggplants or potatoes, you might want to have a slightly bigger container, but just about everything can grow if you have at least 6 inches of soil. The more soil you have, the bigger your root system can get, so the better. You want to make sure you put your containers somewhere with a lot of sun. Most vegetables thrive with about 8 hours at least, especially if they produce fruit. So especially if you're growing tomatoes or peppers, you really want to get the sunniest area in your yard or balcony or patio space. That will give you the best results. The only caveat there is if you're growing more greens like lettuce, arugula, or spinach, they don't need as much sun. So about 6 hours is good for them. And then how do you fill these beds? Well, if you're doing smaller containers, I would recommend just getting sterile potting mix. The weird thing about planting in containers is you're building your own little ecosystem. So if you bring in dirt from your yard and it's not sterile, you may bring in insects that don't have any natural checks to keep them from eating all your plants. So the easiest way to do container planting is to use a sterile potting mix. That'll have all the nutrients you need to get going. That'll have a lot of soil and it'll have usually like vermiculite or perlite to help with drainage and airflow. So that would be my recommendation. If you're doing a larger scale gardening, you may want to make your own potting mix because it can be much cheaper and you can get compost from organic resources for free. And then you want to add some perlite or vermiculite for drainage and maybe some peat to help retain water. But you don't want to do entirely compost because it'll retain too much water and then your roots won't be happy because they'll be waterlogged. The other option you can do is some in-ground planting. And this is how we do the majority of our gardens. We do what's called no-till gardening. So we layer organic material on top of each other. And then as that breaks down, it feeds the soil and you have a ton of nutrients available for that plant to use. And really, the organic material can be whatever you have available. So we always have cardboard. It seems like everyone has cardboard, and cardboard is really great at smothering weeds. So you want to put cardboard down as your first layer, and you want to take off your packing tape. If you can, use brown cardboard so there's no dyes in it. And you want to overlap it, because if you have any gaps in your cardboard where you can see the ground, that's where your weeds are going to pop up, and then it'll be really annoying for the season. So start with your cardboard. You can do a single layer, you can do a double layer to start, and then you want to layer other things on top of that. So usually people have leaves available. Those are wonderful. Straw, grass clippings. If you don't treat your lawn, you can put grass clippings in there, and they're a great source of nitrogen. Any unfinished compost you have. So if you are someone who's saving your kitchen scraps, you can put that down as a layer. That'll feed a lot of your soil. And then you want the top part of your growing space to be compost. And you can get that compost for free from Organic Resources. So if you go there at any time, you can load for free, or they'll fill your truck bed for like $5. They're an amazing resource. Highly recommend. And you want to have at least 6 inches of compost in the top of your planting space. If you're doing a raised bed that's really big, you can fill the same way, and you would fill entirely with compost. If you're doing kind of like an in-ground system where you're converting an area into a plot, you would probably want to do a row of compost that you're going to plant into, and then a row of mulch so that you can access your garden. And then you don't have a lot of weeds growing in between your compost rows. So when to plant? This is a big question, and this is my favorite resource to answer this question. And I think we'll be sharing these slides after, so you'll have these resources. But as well, all of our past presentations and handouts from the Unity Gardens classes are on the Unity Gardens resource tab, so you can access this as well. This is so straightforward. It's my favorite thing. So depending on what week you're in, you can see what you can grow. So right now we're in the 3rd or 4th week of March. So we can direct seed Asian greens, beets, peas, radishes, spinach, arugula. The I stands for plant indoors. So some things will take a little longer to grow, specifically your peppers, tomatoes, eggplants. Those you can start inside as seeds and transplant them where it says T. But this is a really, really easy way to know when you can plant stuff directly in the ground from seed. Anywhere where it says that D, you can put a seed in the ground and you'll get a harvest before the end of our season. So this is great for maximizing your season. So you can plant as early as March for some of these things. And then you can keep planting. For kale, you can plant all the way up until October, and you'll still be able to harvest off of it because kale is frost hardy. So this is a really, really wonderful resource. At any point during the season, if you're not sure what you can still grow, or you're not sure what to start with, this is an amazing one to just consult and plant in the ground what they say you can plant. And the reason things have different starting times is because vegetables have different levels of tolerance to the frost. So right now our nights are probably still between like 25 and 32 a lot of the times. And if you keep a tomato out when it's 32 degrees, it will be really upset with you. So you can't put a tomato out right now. It won't survive the frost. But you can start planting things like kale, collards, and Brussels sprouts because those are really tolerant of frost. They can survive that like 25 to 30 degree weather. So this is just an easy way to see which ones are more frost tolerant versus less. If you're familiar with plant families, usually are brassicas. So anything in the brassica family, that's kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi. Those are all really, really frost tolerant. And then root vegetables are also pretty frost tolerant. So your carrots, your beets, parsnips, radishes, those all do pretty well with cold. And then your things in the Solanaceae family, so your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants, those are not happy with the cold, and you'll have to wait until after our last frost. And same with cucurbits, so anything that grows as a squash. So cucumbers, squash, winter squash, watermelon, those you want to wait till after our last frost. And in Indiana, usually you'll have your last frost about May 15th. It changes from year to year. The average is May 15th. Sometimes it snows like May 20th. So really just keep an eye on the weather. But if you're not sure and you don't want to do that, just come back to this. Wherever it says T, you should be safe to put stuff in the ground. So when you go to plant, there are some things that take a really long time to grow. So I would recommend getting plant starts for them or starting them inside. And those are tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and woody herbs, which I didn't put on here, but woody herbs like rosemary, sage, oregano, thyme. Everything else you can start from a seed and it'll do just fine. If you want to make it easier on yourself, it would be easier for maintenance. You can start most things from plant starts. Unity Garden sells a bunch of plant starts, and there are a ton of local nurseries that also sell plant starts. So they're very easy to source. And then you'll just put them in the ground when your calendar says it's time to go. When you are putting your starts in the ground, you may have something that's root bound. So if you see those roots circling around on that starter plant, you want to break those roots up and put it so that the roots are encouraged to grow out rather than keep circling, because they can't reach all those nutrients and water in the soil if they just are circling around the same spot. So you want to break that up a little bit, and then you want to put it in the soil at the same depth that you got it. So you don't want to bury it deeper or higher than the original soil level. So you can see my lovely diagram there. And then anytime you transplant, you want to make sure you water it really, really well, fully soak the area. Anytime you're messing with the root system, the plant is a little stressed out. So as much as you can water it to help with that transition, the better. The only thing you wouldn't plant at the same height is tomatoes. And you can plant tomatoes at the same height. There won't be any damage if you do that, but you will get a better root system that helps support bigger tomatoes and bigger tomato plants if you transplant it a little deep. So you can either just dig a deep hole and put your tomato down there, or you can trench it and kind of lay it on its side and bend it up. When you are transplanting tomatoes to a deeper height, just make sure that you're leaving at least the top part of the leaves out. You can peel off the bottom leaves and put them under the soil level as well, but that top section of leaves, you have to have at least like 3 or 4 leaves on there. Spacing. So this is really important. You don't want to plant things too far apart, because then you'll have a lot of bare soil, and that's where you'll get your weeds. And nature does not like bare space and will fill it if you don't fill it. So you don't want to leave bare space between your plants when they're at their mature size, but you also don't want to put them too close together, because then you won't be able to get into harvest. Everything will be growing too close together. There won't be any airflow and you'll get some fungus issues. So this is a really good guide. This is from square foot planting. And so you can see in a square foot how many of each of those plants would fit. So for example, rosemary takes up more space than carrots. So you could fit 16 carrots in 1 square foot, whereas you could fit 1 rosemary plant. So this is kind of a good rule of thumb to go back to using this, but it'll also tell you that on a seed packet. If you are buying seed packets, it'll tell you how far apart to space the plants. And that will be more accurate than something like this square foot planting guide. But if you have nothing else to reference, this is a good one to go to. I would highly recommend labeling your plants, especially if you're doing from seed. You want to label wherever you planted so you know what's supposed to be growing, especially if you're new to gardening. If you know what's supposed to be growing there, you can look up what that looks like. And anything that doesn't look like that is a weed, and you can take it out. There are many, many options to label your garden. You can get pretty signs. You could paint your own on wood. You could use plant tags. Some people use the seed packet. They'll flip it upside down and put it on a stick outside. So then they also can see how long to wait for harvest. Or you can also make a map of your space and just keep it inside somewhere. But I find this to be very helpful, so you know what should be growing, you know what to weed out. If you have great success with something, you know to buy that again. So if you really liked a certain variety of tomato or a certain variety of pepper, you can get that again and you know exactly what it was. And then you also know what to look for. So if you label your zucchini as zucchini, hopefully you know what a zucchini looks like and you can go and search for it throughout the season. Watering is really, really important for gardening. You usually want to water about once a week if you don't receive an inch of rain. Um, you will probably need to water more often at the beginning of the season when plants are small, and that's for two reasons. One is that their root systems aren't as large, so they won't be able to reach down further into the soil for the water that's still there. And so you need to water it more frequently so that they can continue living and growing their root systems, but also because young plants won't shade out the soil underneath it. Once you get further in the season and your plants are large, their leaves shade the soil and you don't need to water as frequently. So I'm usually checking my garden probably every day, every other day, within in the first month to see if I need to water. And all I do is I stick my finger in the soil. And if my finger feels moisture, I don't need to water. If it doesn't, I should water. Very, very easy. But you can also get moisture meters. It's got a probe. You stick it in the soil. It'll tell you whether or not it's moist or dry. If you do choose to use one of those, make sure to take it out of the soil. Otherwise, it will rust and give you incorrect readings. And then if you are relying on the rain, I highly recommend getting a rain gauge. You want to empty them after the rains so they don't give you false readings, but it'll tell you how much rain you received at your garden because rain can be really, really regional. So it could rain a lot more two neighborhoods over. And if you're away for the day, you won't know how much rain your own garden got. So rain gauges are helpful. And when it comes to watering systems, I think hand watering is the easiest and most reliable. For one thing, it gets you out there checking your garden consistently, but it's also the cheapest. You can just get a watering can, you can get a hose with a sprinkler head attached, and you know exactly what you're watering. You're not wasting any water by watering the lawn or the pavement. If you don't have the time to do that, you can get soaker hoses. I find that they will degrade faster than a regular hose. But you can set them up to go off at regular times in your garden, or you can get a sprinkler. But anything that has automatic watering systems, the danger is that it may remove you from the garden so you're not checking on it frequently. So maybe there's a leak in the sprinkler system, or maybe you have some bugs you need to clean out or weeds. So if you do use an automatic watering system, just make sure you're still checking on your garden. Weeding. So weeds are very annoying. Every gardener's nightmare. You want to pull them out so they don't compete with the things you want growing there. That bottom right picture is a really aggressive example of a weedy garden. But they're competing for nutrients, they're competing for space. They're not producing anything that you want. So you want to take them out of your garden. The easiest way to prevent them is to cover any areas that aren't being planted with things you like. So that other picture, those are old rugs. This is how my mom mulches her garden. She just finds old rugs on the side of the road and she lays them down in her pathways. And then she pulls them back up in the fall. But then she doesn't get any weeds because the weeds can't grow without sunlight. So you can mulch with old rugs, you can mulch with mulch, you can mulch with grass clippings, something to just cover your bare areas so you don't get weeds in them. And then you want to weed and make sure you're paying attention to those baby weeds in the early days when your plants haven't reached their mature size. And if nothing else, if you start seeing seed heads on your weeds, you want to pull them for sure once they start getting seed heads, because otherwise those seed heads will spread and you'll have a ton more baby weeds. So from that one weed, you'll get 50 to 100 baby plants that now you have to pull out so many more. So if you can get them before they develop a seed head, that's much better. Bugs. There are a lot of bugs in your garden. And this is a whole class all on its own. So what I would say is to just get familiar with the bugs that are in your space. I use Seek by iNaturalist. That's a phone app. It's free. It doesn't need Wi-Fi. You can just go outside and take a picture of a bug and it'll give you like with 90% accuracy what that bug might be. And then you can Google, is it good to have a ladybug in my garden? Spoiler alert, ladybugs are amazing. So you can figure out what's in your garden and whether or not it's an issue, and then research from there if you need to deal with it or not. If you're interested in learning more about this, the book Good Bug, Bad Bug is one of my favorite resources, very easy to use. We also have a class on pests in the garden that we just taught, but the resources are up on our website. So the slides from that are up on our website if you're curious about it. So, what should you plant in your garden? And the main thing I always tell people is plant what you like eating. People sometimes come into gardening with this idea that, like, oh, you have to grow lettuce and you have to grow spinach and you have to grow tomatoes. But if you won't use the tomatoes, don't take up your valuable gardening space with the tomato plant. So, my first advice would be to plant what you can use and just go from there. Um, but I did highlight a few things that I think are really great for kid-friendly gardening. The first being cherry tomatoes, because they produce a ton. They're usually very popular with kids. They're very exciting, um, and they're easy to grow. So I would recommend getting a starter plant, put it in the ground after frost. Um, Bigger tomato plants, ones that produce like beefsteak tomatoes, you probably want to prune them to get a good beefsteak production. Um, but cherry tomatoes, you don't have to do that because the fruit is much smaller. So that's very easy. You can just put them in your ground, and I would put a tomato cage or some kind of trellis, something that supports the plant because they are vining and they get very large. So a tall and sturdy tomato cage, you can put that around your starter plant and just keep the branches kind of in there is the easiest way to do it. But they are so popular with kids. My favorite variety of cherry tomato is honeycomb. They're really productive, they don't crack, and they taste really good. They're very similar to sun gold, which is another favorite variety. If you're looking for just extreme productivity, tomato berry and jello bean are both red cherry tomatoes, so they're a little bit more familiar for kids. But I think the honeycomb and the sun gold beat them out for flavor every time. So those are both yellow varieties of cherry tomatoes. Also, really recommend green beans. They are so easy to grow. Usually you can do bush varieties. So there's bush varieties that just you put them in the ground and they make a little bush and they produce beans, or you can grow them up a trellis if you have limited space. You can start them directly from seed. They'll germinate in like 4 days, really fast. They're very good to eat fresh, very easy for kids to just find on the plant. And they're also really great for the soil. They're in the legume family, so they fix nitrogen in the soil that then's available to other plants. So really good for gardening health. I love green beans. They're like one of the easiest plants to grow, and they reward you with a lot of productivity. Lunchbox peppers. I would definitely recommend mini bells or lunchbox size. These are probably about 2 or 3 inches long over like a California Wonder bell pepper. And the reason for that is the lunchbox peppers will produce and you will get a lot of fruit throughout the summer, and it will take only a few days to ripen. Mini bells or regular size bell peppers take a really long time to start producing. If you like eating them green, they work well in a home garden, but otherwise you may get 1 or 2 over the season. So I haven't found them to really be worth it. But mini bells, definitely worth it. Still familiar enough to kids that they can try it. So choose the small over the California Wonder size. Watermelon I put in here because everyone likes watermelon and they're very exciting to watch grow. They take up a lot of space. I think the square foot gardening plan says they take up 1 square foot. It's more like 4. So just be aware of that. Anything in the cucurbit family, watermelon especially, but also your zucchini and summer squash, they will take up a lot of space and they will expand and take up more space than you expected. With watermelon, the hardest thing I think is making sure that you're not picking it too early. So the things you want to look for is when there's a yellow spot on the bottom of the fruit, that means that it's been sitting long enough that it's probably ripe. If the plant itself doesn't look that healthy anymore, if it's starting to get yellow, that's a good sign. If there's pockmarks on it from insects, that means that it's sweet and the insects are looking to eat it now. So that's a good sign. The other really easy way to know when a watermelon is ready to harvest is if you grew it from seed, it'll say how many days to harvest, usually like 80 days. And so you can just put a calendar reminder for yourself, like 80 days from now, my watermelon's probably ready. Zucchini, everyone who gardens a lot has grown too many zucchini. They are extremely productive. So do not plant zucchini unless you like zucchini. but I think they're very versatile. They're very easy to saute. You can use them in baking. Um, very easy to cook with. You can eat both the blossoms and the zucchini, which a lot of people don't know. So if you eat the blossoms, you also cut down on some of the fruit that it produces. Um, they will take up more space than you expect, but they are very easy to grow, very productive, very beginner friendly. They will have some insect pressure, especially if you're growing zucchini for multiple years. You'll probably get squash bugs, and those will be slightly annoying. You can pick off the eggs, you can pick off the adults, or you can just do succession planting. So you plant some zucchini at the beginning of the summer, you let the squash bugs take them over, and then you plant some zucchini later on in the summer. And then you still get a good couple weeks of harvest without doing any bug control. Forage is usually an unfamiliar one to people who aren't gardening, but they're really fun for kids because it's an edible flower. The flowers taste like cucumbers. And that is not a lie. That's I've done taste tests and asked people what they thought. They taste like cucumber. They're really sweet. So it's super cool to show kids that you can eat flowers and some things. And they will attract so many pollinators to your garden. So borage is always covered in bees and other pollinators. So they're really good for your garden health. The one thing I would recommend is placing it kind of away from your other stuff that takes up a lot of space. It gets kind of tall and it'll flop over as it gets taller. So it takes up more space than you expect. And because there's so many flowers, if you have borage one year and some flowers drop on the floor, you'll probably have borage that sprouted from those flower heads the next year. So once you have it once, it's established, which is really cool. And then my last recommended plant is nasturtium, which is another edible flower. It's really good pest repellent because it's spicy. So it has a lot of strong smells that keep pests from finding your other things in the garden. And the whole plant is edible. So you can eat the flowers, you can eat the seeds, you can eat the leaves, you can eat the stems. Super cool. And they taste really good. And that is my half hour. Anyone have questions? Do we get any questions in the chat?
Well, as people might be
Hampstead and Michelle are saying thank you, so informative, great info. Thank you. Suggesting they really like what to start on if you're going to do of just a few plants this year, what you can plant. And the slides will be sent out, I believe, Terry, and then you do have amazing resources on your website as well.
Yeah. If you want to deep dive into any of these things, there's probably a resource for it on our website. And as far as starter plants, if you get a cherry tomato start, a pepper start, and some green beans, as long as you like eating all those things, I think those are very easy, very productive, and very rewarding. So,
Katie, your edible flowers that you suggested, could they be in containers? The
yes,
last
for
two?
sure.
Good.
Especially nasturtium. Nasturtium is very container friendly. Everything on that starter list is container friendly, but you probably, I think everything except for green beans would benefit from a slightly bigger pot. So instead of 6 inches of soil, maybe a foot.
Perfect. Another question on programs that may end earlier in the summer. So they end, they can harvest by early June. So kind of your traditional school year. Anything you would recommend for just, they're not in session during the summer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would choose things that go to harvest really quickly that will cut out like your tomatoes and peppers, but any greens you can usually harvest within a month. So lettuce, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, any of those will do great. Root vegetables, because you can get them in the ground early. So carrots, radishes, beets, those will do well. And then you could probably get a harvest off of green beans. If you want to get into garlic growing, that's a perennial, so it's a little bit more complicated, but you can get scapes in June, which is really cool. Let me think if there's anything else I'm missing. Yeah, I think those are the early spring things that you could get reliably.
Awesome. Besides indoor gardening, which is a whole nother
Yeah.
thing to do, and we are happy to help talk about those resources. One more question on tomatoes. What one mentioned that cherry tomatoes are very popular and the green beans are popular with the kids. And then there was a question on trimming your tomato plants. You touched on it briefly, but you have to trim. What are your thoughts on trimming tomato plants?
Oh, so I have a lot of thoughts about trimming tomato plants. I think if you are doing any big varieties, so especially heirloom varieties that take a while to produce, if you prune them, you will have a lot more reliable production and they'll start producing for you much earlier. If you don't prune them, you'll probably get a lot of plant growth, but then you'll see a green tomato and it'll stay green for like 2 weeks. And you're like, what's going on? And it's because the plant is putting all of its energy into producing leaves rather than ripening up the fruit you want. So I highly recommend pruning your tomato plants that are large tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are easy because whether or not you prune them, they'll ripen up because they're so small. So if you are interested in pruning tomatoes, let me see if I had a picture of tomatoes. Really quick. So there's like a few schools of thought when it comes to pruning tomatoes. I usually do 1 or 2 leads on my tomatoes, but you can do maybe up to 3. And that just means you kind of prune it like a Christmas tree. So you want your one main stem, like you see in that deep picture. You have one main stem and you have leaves coming off of that main stem. Where you start pruning is you'll get a leaf, and then in the right angle of that leaf and that stem, you'll get what's called a sucker. And that will produce a whole nother lead of tomato, like a whole nother trunk, that will then produce leaves and fruit of its own. And so there's just so many leads going on in the tomato. If you don't prune it, you'll have like 9 or 10 leads, and there's just not enough energy to ripen tomatoes. So it's better with the diagram. I will be teaching a class on tomato growing in the summer at Unity Gardens, and I will probably give people a tomato to prune so that we can learn it all together. But that's the basic idea, is that there's not enough energy for the whole plant to ripen everything.
Thank you. And I know your classes are on Facebook. You do a really good job.
Yes, they're on Facebook, and then you can also check our website.
Perfect. I know we have a good discussion. I want to just real quickly, last 2 questions. So do you have any recommendation for someone that their program ends in June, but they're going to come back in August? What would be good to plant before they leave that maybe has that longer ripening and then it'll be ready to go in August?
Yeah, August is a great month for gardening. So basically everything, tomatoes and peppers, those are all squash, those are all full production in August. The one thing I would say is if you're leaving the program in June and coming back in August, if you want things to harvest in August, you'd have to maintain the garden from June to July. So just make sure you have the maintenance in place for that. If you aren't going to be at the garden between June and August, you could do some fall planting. So it's the same things you would plant in the spring, like your greens and your root vegetables. And you could harvest those, plant them in August and harvest in September, October, and November.
Great. And then one last question. Any plants they should avoid when planting by playgrounds? Specifically, I know we're talking about like vegetables, edible plants, anything?
I can't think of
Cautious?
anything. I mean, if you're doing natives, I would stay away from like Queen Anne's lace because it looks really similar to hemlock. But there's nothing I would really avoid planting from a safety standpoint. There are just going to be some plants that are harder to grow. So like potatoes, I think are a little bit more complicated. Anything perennial is a little bit more complicated. So if it lives for multiple seasons, it's a little bit more complicated. Like garlic, strawberries, raspberries. Still very highly recommend getting into it if you want. You'll just have to do a little bit more learning. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Okay, I do think carrots are a little tough because you have to thin them to get good production. So any of your root vegetables, once you see them germinate and they start having little babies popping up, you want to thin out some of those babies so each has enough space to develop a root. And they really like moisture while they're germinating. So if you put the seeds down, put a piece of cardboard over it, check it every day, and then once you see them start sprouting, take your cardboard off.
Oh, great. And then are the greens from potatoes toxic? Do you know anything about
Yeah,
toxic
don't eat
part of
potato
plant?
greens. Any of the anything in the Solanaceae family, so that's your potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. Don't eat the greens, just eat the fruit. Yeah.
Okay, that's important, especially with working with kids. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, or is that all we got? All right.
Sounds
Pass
good.
it off to Emily.
Yep. And we're not alone. We are here to help answer any of your questions, and that's what Emily's gonna talk to you about.
Hello, everyone. I was tasked with offering some additional resources that you all can use throughout this journey as you get started in gardening. So if you're not familiar with Purdue Extension already, we are a cooperative extension service. So we help bring research-based information and education. So it's kind of a network of colleges, universities, along with the USDA, and we help to serve different communities throughout the nation. So for Purdue Extension specifically, we operate out of 4 program areas. So the first one being agriculture and natural resources, which is my focus. We also have educators in community development, health and human sciences, and 4-H youth development. So I know a lot of you probably are familiar with 4-H, but Purdue Extension kind of encompasses all 4 of those program areas, and we do a lot of work in each of those. Katie, if you could. There we go. So our programs are tailored to meet the needs of Indiana. So for Purdue Extension specifically, we are county-based, meaning every county in Indiana has educators and specialists and volunteers that both live and work in all 92 counties. So we operate kind of as the link between the land grant research and then Indiana citizens. So we work to provide the solutions that, for example, in St. Joseph County, it is my job to meet the needs of the requests and things that the citizens in St. Joseph County are looking for. So if you're local to St. Joseph County, this is our office staff. Like Terry had previously said, I'm the County Extension Director, and I'm also the Agriculture and Natural Resources Educator for St. Joseph County. To the right of my picture, we have Emma. She is our 4-H and Youth Development Educator. We also have Beth Evans. She is our Health and Human Sciences Educator. And then, as you know, Becky is our Community Wellness Coordinator. So we are here to kind of fit what needs you have in each of those program areas. One of the main resources that I wanted to talk about today is under our horticulture and in landscape architecture extension website. So I know it's a mouthful, but if you Google Purdue Extension horticulture, it should show up. And it has a bunch of different tabs that you can look under. So the first one being home, yard, and garden, which I think is going to be the most beneficial for all of you. We also have tabs on extension master gardeners, controlled environment agriculture, vegetable and melon crops, and then fruit crops, which could be of use for each of you depending on what you decide to grow. Mint, turf grass, nursery and greenhouse, port business and marketing, organic agriculture, and urban agriculture. So obviously we have a lot of different resources available in each of those. The one I want to talk about specifically, though, is the home, yard, and garden. I think it could be a really great resource, especially for those who have not gardened before and those who have gardened for many years. There's a lot of really great information on there. So once you navigate to this page, which we'll make sure to send a link out, there's multiple publications filed under each larger category. So for example, there's ones under disease, food safety, general horticulture, vegetables, So kind of those basic overarching categories about your home and garden. And then just the example of vegetables. So if you see the picture off to the right, this links to different publications just under vegetables. So there's a beginner's guide to vegetable gardening, which has a ton of resources and a ton of really great graphs, similar to what Katie shared previously of when to start things, when to plant outdoors, how to maintain, how to know when it's ready for harvest, things along those lines. And then just an example, so under vegetables, there's also a page solely on tomatoes. So I know Katie said that she was going to teach a class at Unity Gardens. So if you aren't aware already, there's a lot to learn about tomatoes. And if you can't make it to that class, there is a 5-page document on this website just about everything that you can learn on tomatoes. So there's a lot of really great resources that Extension can offer. And then obviously, if you have any questions along the way, reaching out to your local Extension office. And if you're not local to St. Joseph County, you can always reach out and we can help you figure out who that best contact is. I know we're getting short on time, but I wanted to run through 2 additional curriculums that I really enjoy. So the first one being Junior Master Gardener. There's a specific early childhood curriculum called Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. It's very easy to implement. It's designed to be easy to implement. It has 4 weeks and it has 5 sessions per week. Obviously, you could split that up to decide to fit the best schedule for you. So week 1 is plant needs and plant parts. Week 2 is seeds and roots. Week 3 is stems and leaves. And then week 4 is flowers and fruit. And I know this picture on the bottom is pretty small, but it is split up by each day. And there's a song and there's an activity that goes along with each of those. And in addition to different literature and things that you can relate that to. And then lastly, there's Grow It, Try It, Like It. It's a garden-themed nutrition education kit. It's available for free to schools and child care centers that participate in the federal child nutrition program. And this helps to introduce children to 3 fruits and 3 vegetables. So peaches, strawberries, and cantaloupe, and then spinach, sweet potatoes, and crookneck squash. So this one is free. The previous one would cost roughly $50 for the curriculum, but this is included in the resource guide that Terry had sent out. And I know I kind of sped through that pretty fast, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those now, or my email is included, and I can follow up with any questions that you might have.
Thank you. There was a comment on Karen had piloted the Learn, Go, Eat, Grow curriculum, and it was super easy to adapt the activities to the program, and it was a good resource. There's a question about recording and sharing. Yes, we know that we specifically picked this time as a lot of times right after lunch is a nap time, so it may be a little easier to hop on, but we are recording because we know not everyone can hop on. So this will be recorded and we encourage people to share. So thanks for asking that. One last comment about an awesome presentation, a lot of information to share with not only at the sites, but also with families and activities and just different ways that families may even be able to do something at home during the summer to connect with their kids and connect gardening with their kids.
Okay. Thank you so much, Katie and Emily, and also Becky for facilitating questions and watching the chat box. I don't know about you, but I could hardly take notes fast enough. There were some things I didn't know, and I love edible plants and edible blossoms, and I love that you are flowers, and I love that you included that. That was great. So we want to thank our presenters today for all of this valuable information, and we will share the slide deck and the recording with everyone attending, so you can share it with families and others. So I mentioned earlier, this is part of a 4-part series with Ready to Grow and hopefully our partners. So please join us on April 29th at 1 o'clock. I will send out a registration for that in the next week or so. Next slide, Katie. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the resources and the mini grant. So when I retired after 45 years as the executive director of the Early Childhood Development Center at St. Mary's in Notre Dame, I wasn't really ready to leave early childhood yet. I had the wonderful opportunity to be the ECDC Summer Gardening Guide. Not a teacher. I learned as much as the children did in both summer seasons. It was a wonderful project, thanks in part to free resources, helpful people, and a gardening grant to assist us as we developed gardening and nature experiences for children ages 3 to 5. My passion for integrated curriculum shaped the gardening program, which included storybooks and puppets, featuring critters that visit and live in the gardens, along with life science, science, math, art, games, and loose parts, all garden and nature theme related. The children adored the hands-on activities, from planting seedlings, watering, which was absolutely the most favorite, and exploring the gardens regularly with magnifying glasses, looking for those insects we heard from Katie, and walking through the gardens on stepping stones, truly being in the garden, as well as harvesting what the groundhog didn't consume, and grazing, not only including the cherry tomatoes, but also some chocolate mint as well. Once the plants are in the ground, though, we discovered that there are some time gaps as everyone awaits growth, blossoming, and blossoms and produce to appear. An integrated gardening and nature approach with literacy, math, life science, play activities, and games engages the children in playful and important learning when tending the garden doesn't take a great deal of time. Now, that is where the Gardening Free Resources and Ready to Grow Gardening Mini Grant opportunity connects directly with this launch of health, nutrition, and movement. Ready to Grow will share after this meeting, either later today or tomorrow, a comprehensive resource list with all of you that includes 2 curricular guides. One of the curricular guides is what Emily mentioned, the free guide. And then there also is a guide that includes purchasing, but that can be a part of your mini grant. And the free resource list includes links to 55 hands-on gardening and nature play-based activities. The gardening resource list will continue to grow and be curated over time. So if you have any resources you'd like to contribute, please make sure you send them my way. In addition, we will be sharing a Let's Start Gardening booklet that will help you consider and vision your own gardening plans, as well as helpful to writing the simple gardening mini grant we'll be sharing. We think program leadership will find the booklet, Why Garden with Young Children, and all the resources helpful as they plan for gardening with their full teams. So now the Gardening Mini Grant. We are so excited to announce the Integrated Gardening Mini Grant today for programs participating in this health, nutrition, and movement initiative. If your program is based in St. Joseph County, you are eligible to apply for the Gardening Mini Grant. The application requires a garden plan for either starting gardening or extending and refreshing maybe the gardens you have. And it includes a materials list that we've created for you to select items your program needs to implement your gardening plans with young children. The items on the grant materials list have been child tested and are high quality to ensure durability, safety, and anything plastic is BPA free. Gift cards to Unity Gardens, Martin's Greenhouse, and Lowe's are included on the materials list. Why don't we move to the next slide, Emily? That's great. So we have gift cards to Unity Gardens, Martin's Greenhouse, and Lowe's on the materials list for the gardening supplies like seedlings, plant containers, soil, mulch, hose, sprinkler, bucket for the children to fill their own child-sized watering cans in. We're thrilled to support your efforts to bring gardening to your program or to extend it and to engage children in this delightful hands-on learning process. Currently, there's a maximum grant amount of $500 for each licensed center, registered ministry, and early childhood programs in public or private schools in St. Joseph County, and $300 grant maximum for family child care homes. Depending on the response to the mini grant opportunity, these amounts may increase. The simple grant application asks for your plans for gardening with young children and a few related questions as how will the garden be maintained across time during any summer vacations or program closures, your plans for family engagement in and around the garden, and plans for activities in and around the garden for the children. Our hope is that today's session, along with the upcoming gardening sessions, coupled with the provided free resources and grant materials, will help guide your gardening plans, no matter how simple or involved. We are eager to assist with your questions about gardening with preschoolers or the grant. Please feel free to contact me via email with questions or include them in the intent to apply survey, which I will talk about in just a moment. I know you all have my email because I fill up your inboxes. So you can send questions your way and I will engage Becky, Emily, and Katie too as needed. You can also directly reach out to them if it's about what their organizations offer or what resources they have. There is an optional intent to apply survey for the gardening mini grants that will assist Ready to Grow with the number of grant applications to expect. It will provide a seamless process for communicating updates with those programs planning to submit a grant, such as a technical assistance information meeting, updates, or answers to questions that we want to share with all potential grant applicants. We anticipate other Ready to Grow early care and learning program grants upcoming next year and beyond. Developing a regular grant process with the intent to apply surveys will be helpful now and in the future. If you don't complete the grant intent to apply survey, it doesn't obligate you or it doesn't restrict you from applying, and filling out the survey doesn't obligate your program to apply. It's just a way for us to gauge interest. So the gardening mini grant includes a grant materials list of the approved items, and it's a worksheet that allows you to add quantities that totals automatically the items as you complete the form, including a running grand total. The gardening grant due date is April 14th. We will also be monitoring the interest regarding an information meeting before the deadline of the grant and to answer questions and provide technical assistance as needed. We hope to share the gardening grant and resource links later today or tomorrow. So I know that was a lot of information and we're right at the 1:59. You guys are awesome. I'm curious what questions you might have before we end this session.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions about the resource list. Maybe they're in a different county, but that resource list could be helpful for their program and to help find grants in their county. Is that something that's going to be shared? We could share that resource list with everyone.
Yes, the resource list and the Why Garden with Children booklet will be shared with everyone.
Perfect.
It's actually it'll go out in an email with the slide deck, the Ag Day flyer, and if your county is in St. Joe County, you'll see the link there for the mini grant and the intent to apply. If you're not located in St. Joe County, of course, that link isn't for you.
And if you aren't located in St. Joe County, I would recommend still reaching out to Terry and I to link you to either the Early Childhood Coalition or contact in your region and county. And then also there are Purdue Extension offices in your county, like Johnson and Marshall. I've seen a few counties on there. And so we can link you with their office and community wellness coordinator to see if there's a different grant that could apply in that county. Is that what you would recommend, Terry?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll do our best to connect you so that there might be opportunities for you in your own community.
I was glad someone did recommend the Whole Kids Foundation has a grant application, and then kids gardening. Um, I know there are opportunities that come up for other grants. Katie, I know you do a lot of grants. Any other ones quickly off the top of your head? Like, kids gardening, Whole
I think
Kids.
Whole Foods we've definitely pulled from. And then Seduxo, SODEXO. They require that it's like led by a youth volunteer, but they're specifically for youth programs. So if you have someone, I think it's under 25, you have to be to apply.
Okay, last slide, please. We are just so grateful for the interest, the enthusiasm, the attendance, and hope you'll engage in the upcoming sessions that will dive deeper into gardening with young children. And I guess that's it, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording. So